Welcome to 2021. It feels really weird to say that, but it's also a bit of a relief given the rather intense year that was 2020 and the events that it brought, many of which we're still living with right now. But rather than pretend like turning the calendar page will magically fix everything that made 2020 awful, I wish that were the case, but of course it's not. I want to talk today about what it means to look forward given our current context. At Ideas on Fire this month, we're focusing on beginnings, specifically what it means to start things given our current world. New Year's resolutions are an obvious example of our collective desire to begin again, to have a fresh start, to build supportive habits for the year ahead. But as I think we've all experienced from time to time, our New Year's resolutions often end up being superhumanly ambitious, and they don't account for the normal life changes that happen every year. Additionally, in the face of massive upheavals like those that transformed 2020, traditional New Year's resolutions can seem almost silly. Many of you have been talking with me and the rest of the Ideas on Fire team lately about feeling like you can't plan anything, or you don't have anything to look forward to, since the global pandemic means that we have many more months of uncertainty ahead. I deeply understand this feeling. So instead of jumping right into planning mode, which tends to be my knee-jerk reaction and definitely not always for the better, the Ideas on Fire team has chosen January to focus on what comes before the plan. Don't worry, we'll get to planning next month and we'll tackle how to make plans that can survive the uncertain present. But here in January, let's think together about the act of beginning. To begin doesn't necessarily mean we have a plan yet. To begin doesn't require that we fully have figured out what we're doing and why we're doing it. Instead, a beginning is that moment of possibility. That moment when we get to dream, brainstorm, and imagine without judgment, as well as without that naysayer voice of reason that demands that we be realistic. Beginnings also don't necessarily need to be about new stuff. Sure, you might decide to start a new project, develop a new goal, or cultivate new habits this month, and we'll be sharing a lot of resources to help you do those things. But beginnings can also entail things like renewing commitments, returning to old events with new eyes, revising your expectations, or letting things go that no longer serve you. Many of the resources that we'll be sharing this month address these less well-represented elements of beginnings too. To begin means to recognize when something in your life or the world more broadly is calling for change. To begin also means to make that first gesture into the unknown in an attempt to try to figure that out. To begin can be as simple as asking a new question of something that you thought you already knew, or resolving to remaining open to what your personal and professional selves need right now. For instance, many people are recognizing that the crisis mode of living that was so prominent in 2020 is just not sustainable over the long term. And they're resolving to build more supportive and long-term systems to nurture themselves, their families, and their communities this year. This month, we'll also be talking about the fear of beginning, or the internal as well as external voices that prevent us from starting things. Sometimes this looks like putting off starting that new project because you're not quite sure how you're going to finish it. Or it can look like an inner perfectionist who tramples your curiosity about a new way of doing things. We're also going to be talking about the iterative nature of beginnings, how we begin over and over again as we work through a project or a goal. Rather than seeing those restarts as a sign that our plan is inherently a failure, we'll be exploring how renewable and iterative beginnings are a vital part of any journey, whether that's publishing a book, teaching a new online class, or building more self-care time into your schedule. Beginnings embody hope, not because the next thing will inherently be perfect, indeed it rarely is, but because we get to change, and we get to celebrate that change, regardless of where it might take us. So here's to a month of beginnings that can bring us joy, transformation, fascination, and growth.